Karen smacked my daughter for spilling juice, not realizing her father's a cop. It was meant to be one of those laid-back Saturdays, just a chill mall trip where your kid picks where to eat and maybe gets a new toy after. My 6-year-old Lily had wrapped up her first week of kindergarten like a champ, so I figured she earned a little treat. She didn't care much for the stores. What she really loved was the food court. Chicken nuggets, fizzy soda, and a cookie bigger than her head? That was her version of paradise. We weren't dressed up or trying to stand out, just a mom and her kid enjoying a normal Saturday, blending into the weekend crowd. The place smelled like fried everything, full of chatter and the clatter of trays, and honestly, it felt like nothing could mess it up. I didn't see it coming, that moment where your day flips upside down because you run into a full-on, textbook HOA Karen. We found a spot near the middle of the food court, not too close to the chaos by the fountains, but close enough that Lily could keep an eye on her favorite pretzel stand. I helped her into her seat, laid out our tray, nuggets, fries, apple juice. I grabbed a coffee and a slice of pizza for myself, knowing I'd probably end up finishing her fries anyway. It wasn't fancy, but it felt like one of those cozy moments that matter. I wasn't glued to my phone, just idly scrolling while Lily told me all about her favorite crayon and her teacher's goofy socks. She looked so proud, so grown up, peeling the straw wrapper off by herself. That table felt like her big kid moment. At the next table sat my ex, Lily's dad. We're not together, but we co-parent well and stay on good terms. He's a cop, and that day he just happened to be off duty, meeting us for lunch. He picked a nearby table to give us space but stayed close enough for Lily to wave mid-bite and him to smile back over his coffee. No uniform, just jeans and a t-shirt, but still, you could just tell. That calm, watchful presence never really goes away. Everything was smooth until she showed up. You could feel her energy shift the room. Oversized designer purse, sunglasses still on inside, and a permanent scowl like the whole world owed her something. She walked like she owned the place, giving side eyes to the teenage workers wiping tables like their very existence offended her. Even though plenty of tables were open, she chose the one right next to ours, close enough to find something to complain about. She slammed her purse down, sighed like she was exhausted by humanity, and wiped the table down with a napkin from her bag like she couldn't trust anything to be clean. Lily noticed her first. She's got that sweet, curious nature, always watching people, not to judge, just to understand. She wasn't staring, just glancing with wide-eyed wonder, but that was enough for Karen to send her a look that could curdle milk. I caught it out the corner of my eye, didn't think much of it. Figured she was just another grump. Didn't know that look was the start of something much worse. 10 minutes later, maybe less, Lily reached for her juice box, nudged the tray, and a few fries tumbled off. Her juice tipped a little, squirting a bit toward the table's edge. Just a splash, nothing crazy. Some dribbled off and maybe touched Karen's bag. Not like we soaked her or dumped food in her lap. It was a kid's accident, the kind you wipe up with a napkin and a smile. I leaned in with a napkin, already apologizing, calm and respectful like any decent person would be. But Karen wasn't decent. She jumped up, acting like she was personally attacked, her voice rising like she was addressing a jury. "Are you kidding me?" she barked. "You let your brat splash juice all over me." Her voice was sharp, shrill, enough to turn heads. People started watching. Lily went still, caught in the blast. I pulled her close and told Karen to calm down. It was just juice, no harm meant. But she was fired up. "She's old enough to know better," she hissed, towering over us. "If you can't teach your kid manners, maybe keep her at home." My blood started to boil. Every mom's dealt with judgment, but the way she spoke about Lily, like she was trash, it made me see red. Before I could stand, speak, or even blink, it happened. Karen lunged forward and slapped Lily across the face. Time froze. I didn't move, not because I didn't care, but because my brain couldn't believe what it just saw. I heard the slap. I saw Lily's head snap back, her eyes going wide before tears rushed in. For a heartbeat, the whole place went silent. Then instinct took over. I threw myself in front of Karen, wrapping Lily up in my arms as she broke down crying on my shoulder. I turned toward Karen, ready to yell, to rage, to say something, anything. But before I could get a word out, I heard a chair screech behind me. I looked up and saw Lily's dad stand, coffee forgotten, his eyes locked on Karen with the same expression I'd only seen when he was working crime scenes. In that second, he stopped being just Lily's father. He was a cop now, and Karen had just made the worst call of her life. That chair dragging across the tile cut through the air like a blade. Karen didn't notice him at first, too focused on glaring at me and Lily, breathing like she just handed out some righteous punishment. But I knew those footsteps behind me. Slow, steady, deliberate. That kind of walk meant something. Lily's father didn't raise his voice. He never needed to. His presence spoke for itself, a calm weight shaped by over 10 years in uniform. And right then, he wasn't walking over as a co-parent or an ex. He was coming as a witness to an adult slapping his daughter. When Karen finally registered he was moving her way, she gave him the same smug, dismissive look she'd given me earlier. That look that screamed she thought she was untouchable. She stood there with her arms folded like she was ready to argue her way out of a courtroom. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, pretending concern, playing the victim. "This woman can't control her little brat, and I'm the one paying the price. She should be grateful I stepped in to discipline her." The second she said it, I saw something shift in Daniel's face. It was a quiet, hardening stillness I hadn't seen in years. He took a breath, not for her, but to keep himself steady, because I could tell every part of him wanted to explode. Instead, he reached into his pocket, calmly pulled out his badge, and held it where there was no missing it. The gold shimmered under the food court lights. Karen's eyes dropped to it, and for the first time, her smug mask cracked. "I'm Officer Daniels," he said, voice low but sharp. "Off duty, but I just saw you strike a 6-year-old. He nodded toward Lily, still curled up against me, crying softly, her little hands clinging to my shirt. "That child is my daughter. You hit her in public, with witnesses. So yes, ma'am, there's a big problem." Karen blinked. Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, spin the moment her way, but she paused. For the first time, she looked unsure. I don't think she expected Lily's dad to be there. She thought I'd be alone, just another exhausted mom she could guilt trip and bulldoze. What she didn't count on was him, someone who knew exactly how to deal with people like her. She tried flipping the script, switching to that false victim mode she probably used all her life. Her voice shifted, soft and shaky. "I didn't mean to hit her. She scared me, and I just reacted. It was instinct." She pressed a hand to her chest like we were the ones making this bigger than it was. "She got juice on me. My bag's ruined." She pointed to her pricey-looking purse, where maybe a few drops clung to the side. Daniels didn't even glance at it. His eyes stayed locked on hers, unwavering. "You don't lay hands on someone else's child. I don't care if juice got on your bag, your shoes, or your hair. That's nothing. She's 6. You hit her, and now you're going to be held accountable." He stepped to the side slightly, pulling out his phone, and calmly made a call. I could hear every word as he gave dispatch his badge number, and requested backup to the mall. White female, mid-40s, short blonde hair, white blouse, black skirt. Suspected assault on a minor. Witnesses on site. Victim is a child. I'm off duty, remaining at the scene. His voice was all business, cold and precise. Karen's eyes widened. She realized this wasn't going away. Raising her voice or acting like the victim wasn't going to save her. She started backpedaling, hands half raised like she could still fix it. "You're not seriously calling the cops on me? This is insane." I barely touched her. "You're really going to destroy my life over some juice-spilling brat?" I stood up then, stepping between her and Lily, my voice trembling but solid. "She's 6. She spilled some juice, and you slapped her." My hands were still shaking, but my words had strength now. "There is no excuse for what you did. None." People started to gather around, not in a loud or panicked way, but in that quiet, instinctive way people do when they sense something big is going down. A teenage girl across the court had already pulled out her phone, recording with wide eyes. An older couple whispered to each other while watching closely, and the food court employees had stopped mid-task, watching but staying out of it. Everyone heard the slap. Everyone heard the shouting. And now they were watching like it was a live courtroom showdown. Karen noticed the phones. Her body stiffened as she reached for her bag, clearly hoping to bail before things got worse. "You people are insane," she muttered, snatching up her stuff. "I'm not staying here to be harassed." But Daniels moved faster. He stepped directly into her path, arm extended, not touching her, just blocking the way. "You're not going anywhere. You assaulted a child, and you're staying put until my team arrives. If you try to leave, I will detain you myself." Her eyes darted around the crowd, searching for someone, anyone, to back her up. But no one did. No helpful strangers, no nods of support. Just silence and phone cameras aimed at her. Now she was truly on her own, surrounded by people who saw exactly what happened and knew who was wrong. The irony was suffocating. Karen had stormed into the food court acting like she ran the place, like she could push people around without consequence. And now she was standing there, small and cornered, caught by the very justice she thought she could ignore. She had no idea Lily's dad was a cop. She didn't know there were security cameras overhead or all those witnesses nearby. She had no clue that the world she thought spun around her was about to push back hard. And as sirens began to echo faintly in the distance, getting louder by the second, she realized this wasn't something she could just walk away from. Not this time. The sirens grew louder, cutting the air like a blade. Karen stood frozen, clutching her purse with tight, pale fingers, eyes flicking between the flashing lights drawing closer and the man standing firm in her path. Officer Daniels, no longer just Lily's dad to the crowd, held his stance like a human barrier. She shifted her feet nervously, her breathing picking up, that smugness from earlier peeling off fast. The performance she'd leaned on, playing the victim, the outrage, the superiority, was cracking. No one was buying it. No heads nodding along, only sharp stares following her every twitch. 2 uniformed officers entered through the open archway, scanning until they spotted Daniels. They walked over without a word, weaving through tables and stunned onlookers. Karen straightened up like backup had finally arrived for her. She even raised her hand, as if hailing a waiter, with a shaky smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Officers, thank God. I've been assaulted and threatened in front of my child by these people. I want them removed from the premises immediately," she said, her voice shaky with forced emotion. "There are witnesses. That woman's daughter attacked me first. She threw juice at me on purpose." Daniels didn't react. He turned to the officers, gave a small nod, and began speaking in a calm, clipped tone. "Suspect is this woman here. Witnessed her strike a 6-year-old child across the face. Assault occurred approximately 15 minutes ago. I'm off duty but witnessed the event. Multiple bystanders present, and mall security has confirmed it's on surveillance. Victim is my daughter. Her mother is here. Bystanders have phone footage. Suspect attempted to flee after I requested backup." Karen's face twitched, something breaking in her expression as she realized Daniels wasn't bluffing or some random dad. The officers didn't comfort her. No sympathetic glances, no listening to her side. They moved into position on either side of her, and one asked her, firmly but politely, to place her purse down and turn around. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Wait, you're arresting me. You can't be serious. He's biased. That's his kid. You can't just take his word for it." But it wasn't just his word. As the cuffs clicked around her wrists, her protests tumbled out. Flipping between anger and shock, another officer stepped out from near the pretzel stand. He was holding a printed image, frozen frame from the security footage. It showed the exact moment. Lily's head jerked to the side from the slap, Karen's hand mid-swing, her face locked in rage. A mall security staffer handed it off quietly, and the officer didn't even need to look at Karen again. "Ma'am, "You have the right to remain silent," he started, reading her Miranda rights as her face drained of color. Around us, the crowd started buzzing. It began with hushed voices, then swelled into louder statements as bystanders stepped forward to share what they'd witnessed. "I saw it all, officer," said a young woman by the ice cream stand, holding up her phone, still recording. "That little girl just knocked over her juice, and this woman snapped. Then she slapped her, like really hit her. No warning at all." A guy balancing a tray of Chinese food chimed in. It came out of nowhere. Everyone just froze. We all heard it. The sound bounced off the walls. It was harsh. A group of teen girls showed the cops the video they'd caught, shaky but clear, with Karen's voice unmistakably yelling, "Brat," before she lunged at Lily. Despite all her earlier boldness, Karen was starting to come apart. Her once perfect hair now clung to her cheeks as she was led through the mall entrance, surrounded by a sea of gawking shoppers and hushed murmurs. Her protests were swallowed by the steady hum of the mall, drowned out by conversations and the ripple of justice closing in. It didn't come with shouting or force, but with evidence, video clips, and the accounts of total strangers who saw a child get hurt and knew it wasn't right. I sank into the bench slowly, Lily still trembling in my arms, her face pressed into my chest. Her cries had softened into shaky breaths, but her cheeks were flushed and her tiny fists gripped my shirt so tight it made my heart ache. Daniels crouched beside us, gently brushing her hair aside to check the spot where Karen had hit her. "She's going to be all right," he said quietly, locking eyes with me. "I promise she's going to be okay." I nodded, too overwhelmed to speak, shaken by what had just happened and how close it had come to something far worse. The officers came back after securing Karen and their cruiser. One handed Daniels a slip of paper, case number, incident report details, directions on pressing charges. They kept it professional, calm, then left us to gather ourselves. The food court slowly began to hum again. People returned to their tables, though many glanced our way, some with sympathy, others just curious. The teens who had filmed everything came over, a little awkward but kind, asking if we needed the footage. One of them, barely 14, said, "I'm really sorry that happened. Your daughter didn't do anything wrong." I thanked them softly, my fingers shaking as I saved the video info. Daniel stayed close, never stepping away. He got Lily another juice and a chocolate chip cookie from her favorite bakery stand, trying to draw out even the tiniest smile. And it worked, barely. Her lips curled just a little, and she sniffled as she nibbled on the cookie. I could see her trying to understand what had happened. "Why did that lady hit me?" she whispered, gazing up at me with wide, confused eyes. It was the kind of question that guts you as a parent. I held her close and spoke gently. "Sometimes people think being mad means they can act mean, but that's never okay. What she did was wrong, and now she has to deal with what she did. You didn't do anything bad, baby. You were just being a kid. She made a horrible choice, and she won't get away with it." Daniels gave a solemn nod, resting his hand on Lily's shoulder. "You're brave, kiddo," he said, "and no one's ever going to hurt you like that again, not while we're here." It took us a while to finally leave the mall. The afternoon had gone completely sideways, but as we walked out together, me, my daughter, and her father, I felt something unexpected settle in. Not quite relief, since there was still more ahead, but something like clarity. The truth had been brought to light, and this time, entitlement didn't win. Accountability did. The next morning, I woke up to a phone full of notifications. I hadn't planned on sharing anything publicly. What happened at the mall was traumatic enough, but it didn't matter. Someone else already had. The video of Karen slapping Lily had gone viral overnight. It started on TikTok, then exploded across Twitter, Instagram, and Reddit. Hashtags like Justice for Lily and Entitled Karen were everywhere. Millions watched the exact moment an adult lost control on a kid. The clip barely passed a minute, but it showed everything: Karen's harsh voice, her face twisted in anger, the loud slap, Lily's startled scream, and then my ex stepping into the frame, badge flashing, voice firm as stone. It was all there, raw and uncut. By midday, local news stations had picked it up, and even a national one covered it. They blurred Lily's face, thank God, and didn't name us, but Karen didn't get that protection. Internet detectives got to work. Within hours, her full name, job info, and even her position on some neighborhood HOA board were all over the web. People shared screenshots of her social media, full of smug parenting advice, preachy rants about discipline, and tone-deaf posts claiming kids today were too soft. The irony was almost too much to handle. She'd spent years crafting a public persona as a wholesome, community-focused woman, and now, in one single video, it was all crashing down. I tried to avoid social media, but I couldn't look away. People were furious, and for good reason. Parents everywhere were sharing stories of dealing with entitled adults, trying to protect their kids, hoping for a world where children could be kids without being punished for tiny mistakes. Dozens chimed in with messages of support. Some asked if we had a GoFundMe to help cover therapy expenses. Others posted open letters to Karen, calling her out in long posts that quickly racked up thousands of likes. A few shared legal insights, reminding everyone that hitting a child, especially someone else's, wasn't just morally wrong, it was a criminal act. Some even speculated about further charges or whether CPS might start looking into her background. Then the fallout hit. By late afternoon, her employer, a mid-level marketing company, released a statement saying they were aware of the situation involving one of their staff and had opened an internal review. Within a day, they announced her firing, citing actions inconsistent with their company values. Her social profiles were wiped not long after. The HOA she was part of pulled her name from their site. Screenshots from upset neighbors painted a picture. She'd been notorious for years, filing ridiculous complaints, bothering families with kids over noise, and saying the playground had too many wild children. It felt like the entire neighborhood had been waiting for a chance to expose her behavior, and now the floodgates had opened. Meanwhile, the legal wheels were turning. Daniels wasn't cutting corners or showing favors. We filed an official report, and Karen was charged with misdemeanor assault. She made bail that night but was ordered to stay away from us. Daniels warned me the case could drag on for weeks, maybe longer, but assured me our evidence was solid. Between surveillance footage, witness accounts, and the viral video, she didn't have much of a leg to stand on. Still, he told me to expect her to pull all the usual tricks, fake tears, stress claims, maybe even file a countersuit. Entitled people rarely go down without making noise. Lily didn't fully grasp what was happening online, and we wanted to keep it that way. She knew the woman from the mall was in trouble. She knew what happened to her wasn't okay, but she didn't need to know millions of strangers were watching, even if most were sending support. Daniels and I agreed to keep her offline until things settled. We rotated watching her, playing games, reading to her, doing everything we could to make her feel safe. Her cheek was still a bit pink the next day, but little by little, she was bouncing back. She cracked up when Daniels accidentally put peanut butter on the wrong side of her sandwich. She laughed when I let her eat 2 cookies before dinner. Every laugh was like a stitch closing up something broken in me. But even as our home began healing, the story kept gaining traction. A Reddit post in the Entitled People subreddit exploded, its title: Karen slapped a 6-year-old in the mall over spilled juice, didn't know her dad was a cop. It was just juicy enough to go viral. The post laid everything out in full detail. Commenters praised Daniels for staying cool, called Karen a textbook narcissist, and demanded serious punishment. Some even said she should be banned from shopping centers. A few argued misdemeanor charges weren't enough, she should be looking at felony child abuse. The anger was everywhere, pulsing through each comment and thread. One night, scrolling Reddit through a burner account, I saw a comment that hit me straight in the chest. That little girl will always remember the day someone hit her in public, and the day the whole world stood up for her. I stared at it for a long time. They were right. Lily might never forget what happened, but maybe she wouldn't remember the hit the most. Maybe she'd remember that her parents stood up for her. That strangers rallied around her. That being a kid wasn't something to apologize for. And maybe, just maybe, that would matter more. Still, the trial was coming. Daniel said Karen pleaded not guilty, which didn't shock us. People like her never think they're wrong. She had a lawyer and was already spinning it, claiming emotional trauma and defamation, trying to twist the narrative to save face. But with every share, every witness, every document, the walls were closing in. I wasn't worried about the verdict. We had the truth. But this whole thing had left its mark, not just on Lily, but on me. For a second, I felt helpless, watching someone hurt my kid while I stood frozen. That feeling didn't disappear just because charges were filed. But what came next was something new. A fire. A quiet fury that this story wasn't going to end with headlines or a court date. I needed it to mean something. Not just for us, but for every parent, every kid, everyone who's ever been made to feel powerless by cruelty. So we got ready for the next step. Not afraid, but focused. Because no matter how loudly Karen tried to twist the story, the truth was already out. And this time, people were paying attention. The courtroom didn't have the drama you see in the movies. No gasps, no bold declarations, no dramatic gavel pounding. Instead, it felt dull and cold, beige walls, lifeless carpet, and a judge who looked more like an overworked librarian than someone who handed out justice. Still, the tension in the air was heavy as we sat in the front row, waiting for things to start. Lily wasn't with us. Daniels and I agreed she shouldn't have to go through it all again, but I felt her in every breath. Her face was burned into my memory from that horrible moment at the food court, and as Karen stepped in through the side, flanked by her lawyer, that same fire rose in my chest. It wasn't rage. Not anymore. Just a solid burn of determination. She wasn't walking away from this. Not after what she'd done. Karen didn't resemble the woman who had once stormed through the mall like she owned it. Her hair, once sleek and polished, now hung in limp strands around her face. The flashy purse was gone, swapped out for a basic, dull handbag. She wore a modest outfit, makeup barely there, her whole appearance toned down to seem humble. But it was fake. I knew better. I'd seen the real her, when the mask slipped off in public, and no courtroom makeover could make me forget. She didn't look our way, but I saw how stiff she moved, how tight her jaw was. She knew exactly who was behind her, sitting there quietly, waiting for justice. The judge walked in, and everyone stood. The hearing was short, just enough to state her plea and lay out the evidence. The prosecution played the mall security footage, followed by a video shot by teenage girls. No one argued. There was no doubt. The slap rang out in the silent courtroom like a shot, and Karen actually flinched hearing it. The prosecutor explained it plainly. An unprovoked attack on a minor, caught on several angles, witnessed by a dozen people. They submitted medical reports showing minor bruises on Lily's face, Daniel's testimony as both officer and father, and statements from mall workers who had dealt with Karen before. It wasn't just one slap. It was her escalation, her entitlement, her complete lack of remorse. Karen's lawyer tried to push a story about stress, saying she had untreated anxiety and snapped under pressure. He pointed to her spotless record and community involvement, trying to sell her as an upstanding citizen who made one big mistake. But it didn't hold up. Too many had seen the video. Too many had witnessed her fury firsthand. And too many were tired of people like her skating by behind status and image. When Daniel spoke, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. His words were steady, direct, and carried weight. He spoke not just as a cop, but as a dad. He talked about the moment he heard Lily scream, the helpless anger that followed, and the long nights calming a child who now jumped at loud voices. He didn't ask for revenge. He just asked the court to not ignore what happened to his daughter. To show that the system protects kids instead of excusing grown adults just because they have a clean resume. When the verdict came, there was no drama, just the quiet reading of the charges and the sentence. Karen was found guilty of misdemeanor assault on a minor. She was ordered to complete 150 hours of community service, attend anger management classes, pay damages for medical and emotional harm, and placed under court watch for a year. But most importantly, The judge placed a permanent restraining order keeping Karen 500 feet away from Lily and our family. She wasn't going to jail, but this would stay on her record, and she wouldn't be able to come near my child ever again. Karen didn't cry. She didn't say anything. She just stood there, jaw clenched, hands together, as the weight of what she'd done finally landed. When the judge dismissed the room, she was led out in silence, eyes forward, never looking back. And that was fine. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need her to be sorry. The silence said enough. Outside, the air felt lighter somehow. That pressure in my back finally loosened, and for the first time in weeks, I could breathe without bracing for something worse. Daniel stood next to me, arms crossed, watching the traffic below. "It's over," he said. I nodded. I wasn't sure what to say. "Think she'll change?" I asked. He slowly shook his head. "Doubt it. But that's not the point. The point is, she didn't get away with it." In the weeks that followed, the buzz around the case died down. The internet moved on, like it always does, to the next viral mess. But around here, people remembered. Karen never came back to the HOA. Parents who used to just nod at us now stopped to check in, say kind things, offer support. And Lily, she got better. Slowly, with time and love. The nightmares faded. The flinching became rare. Her laughter came back, bright and full, filling our home again like sunlight. She never asked about Karen again. She didn't have to. What stuck with her was knowing her parents stood up for her. That strangers stepped in. And when something awful happened, the world didn't turn away. It listened. It cared. And it acted. That was enough for her. And for me, it always will be.